On the evening of August 12, 1985, passengers boarded a Boeing 747 SR at Tokyo's Haneda Airport. It was Japan Airlines Flight 123, scheduled for a short domestic hop to Osaka. On board were 509 passengers and 15 crew members, many of them business travelers returning home, families heading to visit relatives, and children excited for a summer trip. The flight was so routine that, honestly, no one gave it a second thought. But within 44 minutes of takeoff, this aircraft would become the stage for the deadliest single aircraft accident in aviation history, claiming 520 lives and leaving behind a story of terror, tragedy, and haunting last moments. At first, everything appeared normal. The giant Boeing 747 lifted smoothly into the twilight sky at 6:12 p.m., banking over Tokyo Bay and heading west toward Osaka. Passengers settled in, some reading newspapers, others chatting, many just looking forward to the 54-minute flight. But at 6:24 p.m., disaster struck. A loud bang echoed through the fuselage, so violent that passengers thought an explosion had occurred. Unknown to them, the aircraft's rear pressure bulkhead, a massive internal wall designed to hold cabin pressure, had failed catastrophically. The bulkhead had been improperly repaired years earlier after a tail strike accident, and now, under the stress of pressurization, it tore apart. The result was devastating. The explosive decompression ripped through the rear of the aircraft, tearing away part of the tail. Along with it went all four of the plane's hydraulic systems, the very lifeblood of a 747's controls. Suddenly, the flight crew found themselves flying a crippled giant with no working hydraulics, no elevators, no rudder, and almost no ability to steer. For a modern jet, this was essentially a death sentence. Inside the cockpit, Captain Masami Takahama and his crew fought desperately to regain control. With the tail destroyed and hydraulics gone, the plane began to oscillate violently, nose pitching up and down, wings rolling unpredictably. Every time the pilots tried to stabilize it, the 747 lurched in the opposite direction. The only controls left to them were the engines. By adjusting thrust on either side, they could try to turn or level the plane. It was like trying to steer a car with only the gas pedal. The situation was almost hopeless, but the crew refused to give up. Passengers quickly realized something was terribly wrong. The oxygen masks had dropped, the cabin shook violently, and the jet made terrifying climbs and plunges. At times, the aircraft rose thousands of feet, only to drop suddenly as passengers screamed. Some tried to write farewell notes on scraps of paper or in notebooks, knowing they might never see their loved ones again. Those notes, found later, remain some of the most heartbreaking artifacts in aviation history. Back in Tokyo, air traffic control received a distress call. The pilots declared an emergency, reporting loss of control and requesting to return to Haneda. For the next half hour, controllers tried to guide the crippled jet back toward the airport, but every attempt to stabilize the flight failed. The plane continued to oscillate wildly, unable to hold altitude or heading. Controllers suggested diverting to nearby Yokota Air Base, operated by the U.S. military, but even that proved impossible. The 747 drifted aimlessly, climbing as high as 24,000 feet, before plunging down again, passengers experiencing sheer terror every second. For 32 agonizing minutes after the decompression, the plane remained airborne, a wounded bird refusing to fall. The crew wrestled with the engines, trying every trick possible, but the laws of physics were against them. Finally, at 6:56 p.m., the aircraft descended uncontrollably into the mountainous terrain of Gunma Prefecture, north of Tokyo. The impact was catastrophic. The 747 slammed into the ridge of Mount Takamagahara, disintegrating in a fiery explosion visible for miles. Out of 524 people on board, only 4 survived, all women, miraculously pulled from the wreckage hours later. The horror of Flight 123 did not end with the crash. Rescue operations were plagued by delay. Despite knowing the approximate crash site, Japanese authorities hesitated to send troops into the mountainous terrain at night. By the time rescuers reached the scene the following morning, many of the injured had died overnight. Some experts later suggested that more lives could have been saved with a faster response. The survivors themselves recounted hearing cries for help in the darkness, voices of other passengers who didn't make it through the night. The haunting question of how many could have survived if rescue had come sooner still lingers today. When investigators pieced together the cause, the truth was chilling. 7 years earlier, in 1978, the same aircraft had suffered a tail strike incident at Osaka Airport. The rear pressure bulkhead had been damaged and later repaired by Boeing technicians. But the repair was flawed. Instead of using a single continuous splice plate, workers had used two, leaving a critical weakness. Over years of pressurization cycles, the repair slowly cracked until it failed catastrophically that August evening in 1985. It was not a sudden random accident but the result of a hidden mistake from years earlier, waiting silently until the perfect conditions caused disaster. The findings sent shockwaves through aviation. Boeing admitted fault in the faulty repair, and Japan Airlines bore responsibility for operating the aircraft without detecting the long-term damage. Both companies faced lawsuits and public outrage. The captain of JAL at the time, Takahama, was honored as a hero by some for his desperate fight to save the plane, but the airline's reputation took a severe blow. The disaster reshaped aircraft maintenance standards worldwide, emphasizing stricter inspections of repaired components and structural integrity checks. But beyond the technical lessons, the human side of Flight 123's tragedy remains deeply haunting. The farewell notes written by passengers captured the raw emotions of those final minutes. One note, scribbled by a businessman to his family, read, "To my dear children, be good to your mother." Another by a young mother said, "I am so sorry to leave you alone." These words, preserved from the wreckage, tell a story no investigation could capture. The intimate pain of lives cut short, and the desperate love people clung to in their final moments. The four survivors carried the weight of that night for the rest of their lives. They included a 34-year-old woman, a 12-year-old girl, another young woman, and a stewardess. Each had been seated in sections of the plane that were less violently destroyed during impact. Their survival stories are nothing short of miraculous, but they were also a reminder of the hundreds who didn't make it. For them, the aftermath was not just recovery, but living with survivors' guilt and the knowledge of the horror that claimed everyone else. Japan mourned deeply. In the days after the crash, funerals were held across the nation. Families received small coffins, many containing only partial remains. Public anger mounted over the delays in rescue and the revelation of the flawed repair. The disaster became a scar in Japan's modern history, remembered not just for its scale, but for its avoidability. Even decades later, ceremonies are held each August 12th at the crash site to honor the victims. What makes Flight 123 so chilling is not only the number of lives lost, but the way the disaster unfolded. This was not an instant crash where death came in seconds. It was a slow-motion catastrophe, stretching for more than half an hour, giving passengers time to comprehend their fate. It gave them enough time to feel fear, to cry, to pray, and to write goodbyes. That drawn-out struggle is what sets Flight 123 apart. Not just the deadliest single aircraft accident, but one of the most emotionally devastating in human terms. Today, the wreckage of Flight 123 still lies scattered in the mountains of Gunma. Small pieces remain as reminders of what happened, while memorials honor the 520 who lost their lives. The story continues to be studied in aviation schools as a lesson in structural integrity, repair oversight, and crisis management. But it is also remembered as a story of courage, of a captain and crew who fought an impossible battle to the very end, of passengers who faced death with heartbreaking dignity, and of a nation that vowed never to forget. Japan Airlines. Flight 123 is a stark reminder that in aviation, mistakes can lie dormant for years before surfacing with catastrophic results. It showed that even the most advanced machines are only as strong as the smallest details holding them together, and it proved, tragically, that when those details are overlooked, the consequences can echo for generations. If this story gripped you, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell so you don't miss the next deep dive into the mysteries, disasters, and secrets that shape our world.